that is a different level of entrepreneurship. And believe me, commission is no more secure than being an entrepreneur. Because if you're not out there knocking on these doors, making these phone calls and connections, you might as well be on your own. And so, fear, I'd say I dealt with that very early on in the sales career. As jumping into the nightgown business, that was just very natural for me. Just learning to run it online now, that was a big jump. And then my hard drive crashed. It was down, my computer was down for 6 weeks after starting an online company. So,
you're listening to Rise from the Ashes podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Rise from the Ashes podcast. I'm here with my next guest, Janice. Janice, you're amazing, and I met you through the hounds. And a bit about you. So instead of me telling everybody about you, tell the audience who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Okay, Janice Debo, and most people don't know how to pronounce that. I like to call it Debo. But I am a North Carolina girl, born and raised until 15 years ago when I moved out to the West Coast. And well, I'm not on the coast in case anybody watches this after the tsunami. I should still be here. I'm in Central Oregon. And so I was in North Carolina doing sales and marketing. I had a little transportation business for a while, done a number of things. I've cut my teeth in business more when I got out here, and owned for almost 10 years, a nightgown business, a ladies sleepwear business that was online. So I cut my teeth on the online world, learning how to get into Amazon and run eBay website, you name it. And I sold it on there. And local events, I've done event planning, I've done nonprofit work. And when I was in North Carolina, one of my most fun jobs was being an activities director for a retirement community. They were a blast. And so since I've been out here, I started the coaching about 8 years ago.
So how did you get from coaching, from doing e-commerce, Amazon sales, nightgowns, which is just crazy jump across, and you just one day thought, I'm going to be a coach, and then jump across to peak. How did that happen?
Well, it actually wasn't quite that simple. There was a gentleman at the time I had the nightgown business. I was in a bartering organization, and in there, I sold my nightgowns on there, but I also was running as I was an area director here for the company. In doing so, I was working on getting other businesses signed up for bartering. And I was referred to the gentleman that helped me get started from, I think we talk about connections. I think he was like I knew one person who referred me to a second person who referred me to him. And we were talking about getting his services in the bartering company when he said, well, why don't you get paid for what you really do? And I really didn't know what he was talking about. I was clueless. He said, well, you're connecting people, you're teaching people, you're always helping people. And he was a coach, and he developed websites too. What he did was say, and there is a video on my website, Baz, that is him interviewing me. That was the day he got me started. So it's a really short video, but he said, I can help you become a coach, and you can get paid for what you're really doing. And I couldn't figure that out for the life of me. So he took me under his wing, set up the website, and said, now go find a guinea pig. And I was in all these networking groups for what I was doing with the nightgowns. So I announced that I was going to become a coach. And at that point, I didn't know exactly what that meant. But I announced that, and I said, I'm looking for a guinea pig, one person who would like me to help them. One gal was changing from an office job to selling insurance. I won't advertise the company, that gets some free advertisement. I'll leave that. But she was really jumping into a totally different realm. She'd never sold anything. I took her under my wing, and she was my client, but she taught me how to coach because I got to practice a lot on her.
It's interesting. I want to touch on the bartering aspect of this. One of the people that I had the privilege of meeting several times, called Jay Abraham, he's commonly known as the $1 billion guy. Incredible mentor for many, but he also talked about in one of his books about the bartering and understanding what actual bartering is. And it doesn't always mean a direct exchange of service. It could be something much different. Can you touch on that for people, the listeners who are listening to go, well, I don't want to exchange? Because I think it just gives context. It's so much more than that, isn't it?
It is so much more. With this particular organization, it is one of the biggest that there is, one of the largest companies.
You can name them if you wish.
Oh, ITEX, ITEX. And I would sell my nightgowns on there, for example, and people would pay me instead of cash, there would be a cash percentage. Let's say I sold a $50 nightgown, 5% of that could be in cash, and then 95% was going into that barter account. And what I would do is take that barter money and go buy services that were in the system, such as carpet cleaning. The coaches were in there. Anything that was in the system nationwide, and even like jewelry, all kinds of clothing, things of that nature. So it wasn't, you're right, it's not a direct, I sold a nightgown to somebody that I had to buy their services. And so the barter account held my barter dollars, and there was a small fee to be in there, but it was totally worth it. And so when I was managing the area, I would seek out people who could sell their services or their products that other members would enjoy buying and utilizing. So bartering is not definitely direct. I could barter with somebody and not trade services. That's more of a trade than a barter. Trade is more direct than a barter.
I mean, thank you for clarifying that, because some of the listeners are going, well, I just don't want to, I'm a coach, or I'm a consultant, business coach, whatever the title you've given yourselves. And this notion of barter is sometimes looked upon as, it's like a trade for trade, and it sometimes isn't, but it can be in that respect. But thank you for clarifying that. What was the pivotal moment? I mean, in the transition with entrepreneurs, we just throw shit at a wall and hope it sticks last time. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. But one thing we keep coming back to as entrepreneurs: if you don't put yourself out there for whatever reason, you're scared, you're imposter syndrome, you don't want to do whatever, there is a pivotal moment in everybody's entrepreneurial career, and it's a fear moment. What was that fear moment for you? And going, well, if I don't, what's the alternative?
With the encouragement I got from this gentleman, I was stepping into a whole new arena, of course. I was still running my nightgown business. So I wasn't really, having been in sales and being out there knocking on doors and calling on companies, I had pretty much dealt with that fear issue of starting something, because when you're on commission, you might as well be calling yourself an entrepreneur, because you might not write your own checks, but in a way you are, because you're putting yourself out there and the company's taking part of it and you're taking part of it. But that is a different level of entrepreneurship. And believe me, commission is no more secure than being an entrepreneur, because if you're not out there knocking on these doors, making these phone calls and connections, you might as well be on your own. And so fear, I'd say I dealt with that very early on in the sales career. As jumping into the nightgown business, that was just very natural for me. Just learning to run it online now, that was a big jump. And then my hard drive crashed. It was down, my computer was down for 6 weeks after starting an online company. So there you go.
How do you run an online company without a computer?
Well, thank goodness I had a wonderful person building the website that hooked me up with a new hard drive. I wound up using my smartphone. I literally ran it for 6 weeks from my smartphone. And yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge. I've tried to help people that have had starting new things, help them avoid some of the pitfalls and some of the gotchas that I call speed bumps or potholes that cause problems with new companies, startups, transitions. I've worked a lot with the mindset of that kind of a change. So when I stepped into coaching, it was really pretty natural for me. He saw that I was already doing it. He just helped me see that I was going to get paid for doing it.
I mean, I love that. I mean, this conversation is great because people who are either starting an online business, coming into it from a place of not really knowing, because it can be scary. I mean, I've been through the journey, you've been through the journey, many entrepreneurs have, and still there's a lot of people who are going through that journey now, but it's scary. And people
Mhm.
talk about passive income and all the rest of it. There are only two certain ways of earning passive income. One is through stock markets,
Mhm.
the other one is through real estate. Everything else is uncertain because, like you were saying earlier, commission based. To work for it or introduce or nurture, etc. Now, when I'm advising clients and the question comes up, how do I earn passive income? I always ask the question, what do you define as passive income? And I'll debunk that myth straight away. In fact, very recently, Gary Vee actually took to the stage somewhere and said there are only two certainties with passive income. One is the stock market, ride it out, stay there, etc. And he went deep into that. I'm not going to bore you with it. And the other one, it was the real estate market, but in a certain section, which I won't talk about because I won't bore you with it. But what you're talking about now is bartering system and stepping into a new business model, which you didn't really understand for your own words. You didn't know what a coach was
Right.
back then, 8 years ago. I mean, 8 years is a long time. I can understand where you were 8 years ago because I was in the same thing 7 years ago. But what was the fear like going into that unknown? Because the person listening to this now going, well, this doesn't apply to me. It will stay with me because the fear applies to every single entrepreneur and human being in the world. Can you just go through that journey?
Yes, I think the biggest fear now, I knew I could get somebody to be my guinea pig for free, but it was, will people really pay me to do this? Because I had been giving my advice, my connections, and all of this type of thing. I'd been giving it away for so long that I was nervous and somewhat fearful to see if people would pay. I way underpriced myself, way underpriced. Since then, that's changed, and I'm still raising prices today. We have to learn to be confident in our own ability and understand that if something it feels right to us, and if I'm the way I relate to people is this is me, and let's start with where you are right now and go from there. Yes, I've had a lot of clients I've dealt with the fear component, many clients, because they've got to look at some hard facts on what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what needs to change with what they're doing. So change is where that fear component, I think, comes in the biggest. Just changing how we do things. And the gentleman that helped me get started, I mean, he didn't give me a lot of training. He basically booted me out of the nest and say, "Here's a website, get your business cards and keep doing what you're doing." Well, I didn't know how to introduce myself for the longest time, but the title we came up with initially was a networking coach and a business consultant because that fit what I was doing. I was considered and still am extremely well connected and a professional networker, master networker. So I work with a lot of people on how to make those connections and how to build professional relationships within their scope, and who to don't waste time with and who to spend time with.
The distinguishing factors here are who to build relationships with and who to, for a better phrase, kick to the curb. Because not everybody's supposed to go with a journey with you, but some people are supposed to be a part of that journey. How do you discern the difference between each one?
Whoa, intuition.
Uh-huh.
It's not a science. The thing with relationships, and everybody would probably relate to this, it's a matter of intuition. And you don't want to go into a relationship, business or otherwise, and put expectations on somebody. You want to see who you resonate with, who you align with. So there are some practical steps, such as some industries I work with. It's obvious who I need to get them introduced to, and it's obvious who they need to work with, such as I have an excavation company that I work with, and it's obvious that she needs to be in touch with more realtors. That is just paramount in her industry. But then there are some that she shouldn't waste time on. So if you're networking, you're not going to go talk to lawyers, CPAs, unless it's your own. Yeah. So you've got to know your market. But I think who to build a relationship with is going to come a lot from intuition. That's how I built mine. I see who it is I resonate with and who is in alignment with what I'm doing, and do they have my best interest in mind, and can I have their best interest in mind?
Yeah.
So it is very much relational.
I love that. That's great advice for the person who listens to this now. Relationships are everything. They're built with trust. They're built over time. And, there's an old saying, relationships can be built over time, but the trust can be lost instantaneously.
Yes.
And as entrepreneurs, anybody really who's gone through journeys, we've all had people we put faith and trust in. And then for whatever reason, something's happened to disrupt that trust. But it also has a knock-on effect, not just with that relationship, but internally with the person and receiving end of whatever bullshit happened to create the separation. Has there ever been a time that you regretted in a business relation, not in a personal relationship, but in a business relationship, that you really thought could have amounted to be something bigger or better, but didn't for whatever reason?
Oh, that'll take some thought. When I was out in sales, I worked for Canon and I had to hustle. I probably would say there was one company, a big real estate company, speaking of realtors, it's a big firm out in North Carolina, and I was working to have their account. I was working it from a relational standpoint, but sadly, the sales manager was working it from a dollar standpoint. And in order to get the deal, he almost cut me out and felt like it needed to be dollars and cents. They were only looking at the bottom line when I was very successful at building relationships and I had major corporations that were clients and customers of mine. But he didn't trust that. And so that put a breach in my relationship with my own boss, which was sad. And also, I wasn't able to build what I thought could have been a long-standing nationwide account. And so my gut, I wasn't as intuitive back then that I can think of. I don't think I was. I think I was more, I was relational, but it was different than it is now.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. You say you weren't intuitive back then. Was that the case, or were you not able to hear it within yourself for whatever reason?
I'd say that's more it. I didn't understand awareness and intuition back then like I do now. And it was I wasn't as bold to speak out either. I can tell you that. I didn't want to go against, he's the boss. What are you going to do? I think it was even the guy that owned the company that I was dealing with, not Canon, but the dealership. So I probably could have spoken up more boldly because I had some really if I said the names, people would know who I was talking about. I had really big companies I worked with.
Mhm.
And it was very good at building long-term relationships with people. I'll tell you about a book that I stumbled onto that I would recommend to your audience.
Please.
And yeah, that's called Relationship Selling. If somebody's in sales, owning, even an entrepreneur, it's out of print and has been for a while, but it can be bought used on Amazon, probably some other outlets. It's a wonderful book. I was barely scraping by in sales, and then I found this book, and it resonated with me so strongly that when I started reading it, I think by the time I got through reading it, I had doubled or tripled my sales, maybe even more so. I made a lot more money when I started understanding it is relationships because I had been trained previously more of the old school. I kind of say the used car salesman, for lack of a better term.
While we're on the subject of books, do you remember the author of that book by chance?
Oh, Jim Cathcart. Jim
Yeah,
Cathcart. Yeah.
yeah.
It's worth anybody in a business. Matter of fact, I had a photographer that I was working with locally, and sometimes I have a client read a book, so I told her we're going to work through that book. And by the time we were done, she didn't really need me anymore after, so I think it was like a year. But we'd built her business up so much. She goes, I'm too busy. I've got to scale back. I'm like, well, that's a good problem. But she loved that book. She goes, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And it really helped her career too.
Yeah, I know Jim Cat, not personally, obviously, but I know Jim from other dealings and him being a instrumental in the personal development world and also in the business world. I have a personal friend called Jim Britt. He's a
Oh, I've heard of
yeah,
him.
yeah, an incredible guy. He was Jim Rohn's business partner, and in fact, he was the guy that took Tony Robbins' first payment.
Oh,
An incredible story. But he speaks of Jim Cathcart very highly. So if you ever stumble across any of his books or have a chance to have a conversation with any of these, I call them old timers. They're
oh.
not. And Jim's going to probably kick me in the head for saying that, because, but their resources, their knowledge are unbelievable. What you're speaking about now, this is why I love conversations like this, because it's real time experience
Mhm.
from the other side. I mean, coming from a mainstream e-commerce business into I'm now just going to be doing this, and then meeting the right people. There is no serendipity here. This is just
Oh,
coincidence and alignment.
that's right.
Um, Before we depart for this episode, what is the one key takeaway you can give the audience and the person who listen to this from transitioning from corporate or a structure that they've very well known into suddenly want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, start with what you're passionate about. If you don't know what you want to do, does it align with your passions? What do you feel strongly about? I would say that I'd go with that. When I stepped into the online world of nightgown sales, I didn't have a passion for it until the previous owner of the company that we bought sent me some of the product. And then I was wild about it. And it really hit all the buttons for me because I knew I could help women feel better about themselves. That's what I've been about, is helping people like themselves better and, enjoy what they do. But make sure you're passionate about it. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to have a really deep calling and a passion about what you're doing. I also tell people, I encourage people, don't go talking about it with everybody under the sun. Go to everybody that, especially if you know they're naysayers. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Keep it under wraps. Journal, write out your thoughts, listen to episodes like this, read what you can get your hands on, but it's gotta be about what you feel strongly about, what you're passionate about.
I love that advice. It's great advice coming from somebody, who's lived a journey like yourself, and don't talk to everybody. Don't share your ideas with everybody, because not everybody is who says your friend is your friend. Just remember that. For myself, thank you very much, Janice. Until the next time, please, I look forward to it. For my audience, please like, share, and subscribe, and share the podcast, even if it's one episode, with somebody who might resonate with this message. You'll positively change someone's life. This is Rice from the Ashes. I'm Baz Porter, and have a wonderful day. See you soon.